Good evening, everybody. This is Oakland County Democratic Party Chair Vaughn Derderian. We're here with the very first one of our candidate forums for the year 2020. This is obviously a crucial year, and we have contested primaries for the Democratic Party in Oakland County in all four of the countywide positions. So tonight is going to be our first candidate forum. We have with us Chief Barnett Jones. Barnett, do you want to say hi?
Hello, how you doing?
We have retired Oakland County Sheriff's Deputy Randy Maloney.
Hello.
And we have former State Senator Vince Gregory.
Hi.
Hi. So I'm just going to do a little bit of quick housekeeping before we get started. We're trying very hard to provide some value to all the Democrats across Oakland County. This is something that we've been working very hard on over the past 5-6 months. And we're very proud to be able to present these candidate forums to you, and we hope that you find them informational and enjoyable. The first thing I'm going to ask is for each of the candidates to give us a quick introduction of themselves and talk a little bit about why they're running for sheriff. And the first person is going to be Chief Jones.
Hello, thank you. And I'd like to thank the Oakland County Democratic Party for affording me this opportunity to reach out to the voters and present myself to them. People ask me, why am I running? It has always been a dream of mine to run for the Oakland County Sheriff's Office. After I retired and moved on to other departments, I was always looking back home with the idea that someday I would run for the sheriff's position. I'm running a grassroots campaign now to try to bring change to the Oakland County Sheriff's Office. And why am I doing that? Is because I believe I am the best qualified candidate to run for the office. My grassroots campaign will be steeped on the fact that I am trying to bring transparency, social justice, social reform, and other platforms like special community policing and diversity inclusion to the office of the sheriff. My background includes an advanced education and extensive special certifications in law enforcement leadership. My life has been law enforcement. My time at the Sheriff's Department, I worked as a deputy, as a detective, as a sergeant, as a lieutenant, and as a decorated captain before I retired to go to Sterling Heights as the police chief. And from Sterling Heights, I went to Ann Arbor as the police chief and the fire chief also there for about 2 years. And I retired and went to Flint to help the emergency manager. I am now the chief of security in Detroit for Great Lakes Water Authority, providing water and security of that to all of you. My life has been law enforcement. I have educated myself to be the best law enforcement officer and leader that you could have. This is my opportunity to try to sell myself to you, the voters, and I welcome the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief. All right, and next up for the introductions is retired Deputy Randy Maloney.
How you doing, everyone? Thank you very much for the opportunity at the Democratic Party to be here with you tonight. I'm running for sheriff because, like Barnett Jones, it's been a lifelong dream. So on day one, I did my whole career there. I did 25 years. Why am I running? Everybody asks, why am I running? Well, I'm running to clean up the sheriff's office, which everybody who's worked there knows the place. It needs to be cleaned up. Of course, we're going to have community policing, but we need more programs for the inmates. We need programs that fit the crimes. The punishment has to fit the crime, and that's not there. So I'm going to keep everything short. We have a limited amount of time, but that's why I did my whole career there, 25 years. I've seen many inappropriate things, and things need to change. I just retired 2 years ago. All my friends, fellow deputies, fellow command officers are still there. I get daily calls, text messages. They keep me informed what's going on. I've worked every position in the jail, outside the jail, transports, courthouses. No one running for sheriff can say they worked every position like I have. So I want to thank you very much for listening, and I'm ready to be your sheriff and make changes.
Thank you very much, Randy. All right, and Senator Gregory, you're third on the rotation here.
Thank you, and I want to thank the Oakland County Dems for this opportunity to be able to present myself to the voters, as we know that the primary voters are strong voters, so I'm looking to make sure that they know who I am, and I do appreciate the Oakland County Dems for giving this opportunity. I'm running for Oakland County Sheriff because we need an experienced leader who stands for integrity, inclusivity, and accountability in law enforcement. As a U.S. Marine, fought in Vietnam, former state legislator, former county commissioner, a former state legislator, and I've had a career in law enforcement. I've held these positions of public trust for decades. And it's an honor to serve our communities, and I'm eager to continue my service as your next sheriff. I would like to begin part of my beginning by at least explain who I am, talking about who I am. I served with the Wayne County Sheriff's Department for 30 years. During that time period, I spent time in the jail, and then I went on to work at the road patrol, which has the motorcycle unit. I was on the motorcycles for a while. I worked out at the courts. I worked at the airport. So I've had advanced time in the Sheriff's Department, and that was within my first 10 years within the Sheriff's Department. At that point, I decided I wanted to do more to help the deputies in Wayne County. So I joined the union. And 6 months after I became a union steward, I was appointed to vice president. I stayed vice president of the union for 10 years. During that 10 years, I represented deputies in hearings for different issues, trying to represent them, trying to make sure that they didn't get railroaded, to make sure that they had the best representation possible. Then I was elected to president of the union. And during those 7 years as president of the union, I was the lead negotiator for the Wayne County Sheriff's Deputies Union. And at that time, the Wayne County Deputy Sheriff's Union was the largest Sheriff's Deputies Union in the state of Michigan. We had 1,200 officers at that time, police officers and detectives. And I represented them as a lead negotiator. And as a lead negotiator, negotiated with the county execs at that time, which included County Exec McNamara, County Exec Bob Ficano, and County Exec Warren Evans. So I've had my experience in being able to negotiate, and I really learned the art of negotiations during that time with them. Prior to leaving the Sheriff's Department, I decided, I've always been a planner. And prior to leaving the Sheriff's Department, I said that 5 years before, I wanted to set my goal of where I wanted to do after that. And I knew that I enjoyed and loved working with people and serving and helping people. So 5 years before I retired, I ran for Oakland County Commissioner and got elected. Spent 10 years as an Oakland County Commissioner. And after those 10 years, I decided to run for state representative. But just as I said, being a planner, when I graduated high school, I started college and went into college, but the war came, Vietnam War, and I went into Vietnam. I spent 2 years there, and so my college career ended. But I made a promise to myself that I would get my degree before I ran for any statewide offices, which I had a desire to do. So I went back to Madonna with about 7 years into my commission seat. I went to Madonna University, got my degree, and then after 10 years on the commission, I ran for state representative. I spent 2 years as state representative where I ended up making a difference with some bills that I had. And then I ended up running, and I'll say one of the most significant things during that time period was when I ran for state representative. As a state representative, I was elected with the most votes of any state representative in the state of Michigan. And then 2 years later, I ran for state senate. And in the state senate, I have two notable things there. I was on appropriations, and part of the appropriations was being a Democrat on there. It was 8 people on there, and I was chosen to be a part of the small group to work on Medicaid expansion. It was only 2 Dems that were chosen to be on Medicaid expansion. I was one of them, and I was able to help get Medicaid expansion passed during that time. So the other notable thing was in my second term in the Senate, running in the general election, I received the most votes of any state senator in the state of Michigan, Democrat or Republican, by 10,000 votes. So I am here running for sheriff. And at this time, I would ask to listen to what I have to, please listen to me. And as the time goes on, I hope that you will find that I'm a qualified candidate for this position and ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Just to go over the ground rules before we move into the question and answer part of the forum. We drew for positions before we started. Each one of the candidates here was assigned drew a position. We're going to ask the same question to all three candidates. They will each get a chance to answer with between 3 and 5 minutes of time. They will all get a chance. They get one rebuttal each if they would like to. And after we've gone through a couple of my prepared questions, we're going to take questions from people who are watching on Facebook and bring those back and ask those to the candidates, time depending. So my first question, and again for all three of you, is to ask you, in each of your opinions, what's the most pressing and immediate challenge that you would need to address first should you get elected as Oakland County Sheriff? What would you be tackling on day one? And the first one up on this one is retired Deputy Rainey Maloney.
On day one, I'll just keep all my answers short, so we just got a short period of time. On day one, since I just retired, my whole life was at the Oakland County Sheriff's Office. Day one would be to bring in all the inappropriate behavior that's been going on for years and correct all that first and foremost. Nobody wants to talk about the inappropriate behavior. I will, because I've seen it. It was there my whole career, and it just seemed to get worse as time went on. So day one, that'd be my first, to start to clean up the sheriff's office, be my first duty.
All right, thank you, Randy. Senator Gregory, you're next. Same question. In your opinion, what's the most pressing challenge that you would need to address on day one of your tenure should you be elected as Oakland County Sheriff?
Well, I appreciate that, and I'll also keep this answer short. On day one, in our community, we do not see enough of the Sheriff's Department, of the Oakland County Sheriff. We hardly ever see the deputies there. We see more state police than we do the Oakland County Sheriff's deputies. Day one, I would start putting together a program to be able to get the officers of the Oakland County Sheriff's Department more so involved in the South End. One of the things we could do, it would be the secondary roads. The secondary roads are typically patrolled by the sheriff's deputies, and yet we don't see them here. So that's one of the things that I would do to augment the local police departments, but also make sure that the sheriff's department is visible for this part of the county.
All right, thank you very much. Chief Jones, same question.
On day one, I would have to access to see what has been taking place with the COVID-19. The Oakland County Sheriff's, the main jail and the annex were not set up for social distancing. And if you've been aware of the fact, it's been in the newspaper. So I'd be trying to figure out what had been done and what did I inherit on day one. COVID-19 requires some type of masking and testing, especially the inmates and the staff. What has been done to make sure that the staff is safe, what has been done to make sure that the inmates are safe. So my first responsibility for the Oakland County Sheriff's organization would be to find out where are we at with COVID-19. We are already in the first wave with the possibility of a second wave and possibility of a third wave by the time we assume office in January. So what has been done to make sure that the men and women that wear the uniform and the civilians are safe? Because the Records Bureau and the guns and everything else, they're also set up not for COVID-19. So what type of work is being done now? What work will be finished by the time the new sheriff takes over? And then assess that and take care of it so that the people are working in a safe environment, the inmates have a safe environment, and then we can move on to the other things that are on my list and my platform.
All right, great. Thank you very much for your answers, gentlemen. So the next question I have is a little bit longer and potentially a little bit more in depth. But as all of you very likely know, and almost all of our viewers likely know, a Minneapolis man named George Floyd was killed during an attempted arrest by officers of the Minneapolis Police Department just this past week. Many people are looking at this death as another piece of evidence of systematic bias inside the justice system and inside the law enforcement community. So what steps would you take to find and reduce or eliminate potential systemic bias inside the Oakland County Sheriff's Department and across Oakland County? And this is going to Senator Gregory first.
Okay, thank you for the question. I think first of all, on day one, going into the department, I would start by going to all the different divisions and speaking to all the officers and let them know that I'm the sheriff and that at this, and as being the sheriff, that we will not tolerate any abuse of any citizens. But I think it goes deeper than that. I think the sheriff can say that, but it goes back to education. I think that the sheriff has to make sure that his department is an educated department, that the officers are trained and they are taught the things that they need to be taught, and make sure that they know that they will be held accountable for any kind of behavior that is not called for. That kind of behavior that does not speak to what they've learned in their training and through other areas where they've been taught these different things. I think that in this particular case, I think that the I thought that what happened was a good reaction. I know they fired the officers. They fired 4 officers, and I think that in this case in Minnesota, I think that there needed to be a message sent to the rest of the officers that this will not be tolerated. And I'm not sure, and without knowing all the details, you just don't know all that's involved in it, other than the one officer that you saw and what he was doing. And obviously that was certainly a fireable offense. And yet the other officers were standing there and didn't do anything either. So they all got caught up in this. But to me, a lot of this goes to training and because you notice a lot of the departments that, if you look at the departments that have the training, they don't have those, they don't have as many problems or very few problems at all if you get the training and get the officers to make sure they know what they can and cannot do. And also put the officers in a position where they're involved with the public, where they spend more time with the public, where they understand the issues of the public, the feelings of the public. And I think that you would see a reduction of those. Also, I would reach out to the public to make sure that they knew that the Sheriff's Department was open to any and all grievances, any and all complaints about the officers, that we actually will look into those and make sure we do a thorough investigation of those complaints. A lot of people feel that if they go to the police department, they will not be followed up by any investigation. And I think that's what one of the things that we have to make sure we do is get the message out. This department will investigate all complaints and all issues that revolve around our officers. I think that that's the only way that you can gain public trust. And I think that's what you need is public trust, because if issues arise, you want the public to step forward and to speak out about those issues.
Thank you. Chief Jones, again, same question for you. What steps would you take to find and reduce or eliminate potential systemic bias in the Oakland County Sheriff's Department or across Oakland County as a whole?
First off, my condolences to the Floyd family, also to the citizens of Minnesota and to America. This has been another tragedy that we're watching unfold, and today we watch it unfold via the cell phone. Back to here, to Oakland County. First off, I have upon my election, I have this idea about a commission where I'm going to reach out to people in Oakland County on a volunteer basis and bring them to the sheriff's office, and we're going to have a seat at the table. And we're going to talk about social justice reform. We're going to talk about community policing. We're going to talk about those type of ideas that I have in my mind about how to end the violence and how to bring real talk to the sheriff's office. I believe that because of the fact that sometimes, and it has happened in the past, when I take my uniform off, I look like the George Floyd. So I've experienced those type of traffic stops firsthand. The realization is I am better prepared to sit down and talk with the community and then talk with the officers. I'm going to bring everybody in. Let's have this discussion. It goes back to a sense of training. It goes back to the type of officers you have. Have you done good background? Have you done internal affairs and kept up with what's all going on in the officer's life? Then you reach out and you make sure that you get the officers some help. We have good officers and we have bad officers. I can tell you that across my career, I've been in law enforcement for over 40 years. I've taught in police academies. I've taught multiple officers. Never once was that act of putting your knee on a suspect's neck ever taught. That is something that was never taught and never condoned. So you see that type of action, you know that no one ever taught that particular officer how to do that. So where did that come from, and how did it get to manifest itself that 3 other officers, based on what we've read, stood by while this took place? So there is something systemic there that needs to be dealt with. Looking at it internally for the Oakland County Sheriff's Department, I have this idea that I always utilize. I sit down with my staff. I call it, you listen, you learn, and then you lead. You bring all your officers in, you sit down, you talk about the pluses and the minuses, the things that are going great, the things that are going bad. When you start talking about training, policies, procedures, rules, regulations, how do they view this type of scenario? How close have we come to it in Oakland County? What can we do to make sure that it doesn't happen in Oakland County? Now we're listening. And then we take it to the learning part. That is the training part. Also, not only for Oakland County, because you expanded on that and you talked about the county. I would reach out to the other chiefs, and I have an idea about bringing all the law enforcement leaders in, and let's sit down and let's talk about standardizing the type of officers we hire, the type of training that we give all our officers, so that all around the county, all of our officers have the same type of training, the same type of skill base, so that we can make sure that this could not happen. Because it may happen and another department in Oakland County would have to respond. So it's about training, it's about knowledge, it's about skill set, it's about making sure that in your department, when you have those officers that should not be in law enforcement, you get them out of law enforcement. As I said, there are a lot of good officers, there are a lot of bad officers that are making us look bad. It was a terrible thing to see this take place again. And that is why we have to come up with programs, systematic programs, tracking our officers through internal affairs. The one officer had a history of getting engaged in this type of scenario. That is the type of officer that you learn how to weed out. And that would avoid your department being placed in this type of scenario. Listen to the officers, learn from the officers, then lead. After you gather the information about this type of scenario, you put in the system-wide training, you give them instructions, and then you lead. And you don't lead from the office, you lead from the front line. You make sure that the officers know that you're going to do the same job that they're going to do, which means, as a sheriff, I'll get in the patrol car and ride with my officers. So that way we can talk. It is important that as sheriff, you take a hold of your department so this type of tragedy doesn't happen in Oakland County and doesn't happen to the sheriff's office. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Maloney, your turn.
Well, first and foremost, it goes back to the inappropriate behavior. It needs to be cleaned out from the top down. That's relevant. I've been there my 25 years. I've been in the training. We have great training. We have great officers. There's just a few bad apples that need to be dealt with if they're not being taken care of by command staff, which happens in all departments, especially the sheriff's office. It happens. It's a bad thing because everybody in law enforcement a black eye when stuff like this happens around the world, around the nation. But we have great training. We just need to up our training in certain areas and clean out the inappropriate behaviors. I know who the bad apples are. I was there 25 years. I just left 2 years ago. I trained in every spot. So to go back, clean up, clean the house, then start all over with training. And the road patrol guys, they're great guys. And very few times is there something really bad that happens. Thank God the sheriff's office does a great job on the road. They're great guys. They have great training. It just, we have some bad apples and it starts from command down. Our command takes care of the bad apples. So in turn, that's where the problem is. And hopefully, when I'm sheriff, we get in there, take care of business, start over with training. Anybody who knows me knows I will not tolerate anything against the citizens of Oakland County. They know that. I've ridden in the patrol cars with these guys and women. They know me. They know I won't tolerate this. I'm cut and dry. SIU, every department has to be looked at again. I know where the bad apples are in those specialty spots also. So it starts from the top down. We have no leaders at the top. That's been since day one I walked in the door. So that's how that should be taken care of. Training is good, but we need more training, more community policing, get with community leaders. I'm going to have an open door policy. Everything gets investigated, no matter how small of a problem it is. They do not get enough investigation work. So hopefully we can start with that.
All right, thank you. So we're going to go back to the top of the rotation here. The next question, again, for all three of you. The Oakland County Sheriff's Department has around 1,400 department employees and has an annual budget of over $163 million. What experiences you had in your personal or professional careers that would have prepared you to run a department of this size? And first up is going to be Chief Jones.
Thanks for the question. It's a good question. Well, besides working in Ann Arbor, where I had the police department, the fire department, and emergency management, I operated a budget of about $60 million. When I was at the Oakland County Sheriff's Department as a captain, I oversaw the 4 divisions. So I know that the current budget is roughly about $163 million, and there are about 1,439 officers there. Corrections, I believe, is about 57 million. The road patrol is 60 million. And then you've got investigations and the satellite services taking up the rest, along with the administrative portion of that. I've had a lot of experience in budgeting. I've gone through the sheriff's budget. I looked at the information in the budget, and I believe that I have a sense of balance and knowledge about how that department is running enough to take a look at the budget and go through their budgeting process. Oakland County, I believe, still budgets on a 5-year plan, although the new county executive may change that, especially with the budget deficit that is coming up. I'm quite sure there's going to be a budget deficit percentage rolled over to the Oakland County Sheriff's Department. So the new sheriff will have to be prepared for that. As sheriff, I've been through those type of scenarios before. As a police chief, when I was in Ann Arbor in 2008, the bottom fell out of the economy. I had a department I had to run, and I had to work through losing $7 million the first year, $7 million the second year, and probably about $6 or $7 million the third year until the budget started to stabilize. And you have to keep the services up. So I'm prepared and I've been trained to handle a department going through a budget crisis, which I believe it won't be a crisis, but there will be cuts coming from this COVID-19 in the next fiscal year. And I'll be prepared to do that because I've had the experience of keeping the level of service up, keeping the people employed, and keeping your department functioning at the 100%, keeping the citizens taken care of, working through a budget problem. And I believe I have the experience to handle the budget. It doesn't matter the size of the budget. What you learn is you manage people to manage the budget. With the experience and knowledge of sitting in that office, I would have the ability to manage the budget by having the prior knowledge of managing budgets in my past. Thank you for the question.
All right, thank you. And next, we're going to go to retired Deputy Rainey Maloney. Same question.
Well, the budget, you can't really tear a budget apart too bad. I've had training in the budget area. I'll take one incident. I worked in the kitchen. I worked with the old sheriff's staff that had each meal down to a 2,000 calorie meal, down to under $2, $2.50. Now it's gone over $8 a meal since it was contracted out. So most of the budget is these contracts that have to be rebid on. When I was there, the same contracts went to the same companies for the 25 years I was there. I would start with the contracts. I'd reopen these contracts, take new bids, and go with the lowest bidder for the same amount of work. Some of these contracts have been around 30, 40 years that I know of. So the budget is going to be there. You can't cut the services to the taxpayers, but you can work with the budget, with the contracts. Millions and millions of dollars with these contracts. And I know they can be cut in half right from the get-go.
Okay, thank you. And Senator Gregory, same question to you. What professional or personal experiences have you had that have prepared you to run a department of this size?
Well, professional experiences, as I indicated earlier, I was the president of the Deputies Union, president and vice president, but more so during the time as the president, we negotiated with the county with Wayne County and their budget with the Sheriff's Department. And we went through times when there was shrinkage in the department, when the county was trying to figure out the best way how to save money, and the debate came about as far as overtime. Should we hire people or should we just pay overtime? Those are some of the issues I think that will come to the Oakland County Sheriff's Department this January. I think that that there may be some shrinkage in the county, some positions that may be looking at, and as was said earlier, I think that we'll have to be innovative with that. But I know enough to know that I don't have all the answers, and so what I would do is bring some people on the staff that would have maybe better knowledge than I would have as far as trying to get through this, to be able to save the services, save as many services as possibly can, and yet save money from the Sheriff's Department. I do believe that there will be a time when we will be talking about how can we cut some money from the Sheriff's Department. We don't want to cut services, but there will come a time, I think, that that discussion will have to happen. And as I said, know that you don't know. And I may know some things, but certainly other people that have more knowledge on finances might be more able to help me to be able to do the things that need to be done within the department.
All right, thank you, Senator. The next question I have, this is kind of a little bit of a follow-up question from some of your answers, but at different points in your answers tonight, all three of you have mentioned community policing. And that's something that I did some digging into before we started talking tonight. And I think it's a term that gets thrown around a lot, but it kind of winds up being an umbrella term that can mean a lot of things or nothing depending on who's applying it and how. So I wanted to throw that out to all three of you and get each of you to define what community policing means in action to you. What would it mean to have an Oakland County Sheriff's Department that really does live up to the idea of community policing? And I think this one goes to Deputy Maloney first.
My idea of community policing, great topic. Love to bring it back. Love to bring foot patrol back. Get out, shake hands, meet the public and business owners of your area that you have a contract. The Sheriff's Department has a bunch of different contracts, so they're not everywhere. But community policing is getting out of your patrol car with no emergencies and walking around, talking to the community, talking to the business owners. Get foot patrol again. Bring foot patrol back so you are visible to the taxpayers. The citizens can see you. They can come up to you, talk to you, ask you questions, not from car to car or on the phone or over the radio. But community policing, get out, foot patrol, meet the public that you're working the contract for.
All right. Next, Senator Gregory.
Yep. Community policing. The way I see it is community policing is policing, and as the Deputy Maloney said, it is actually the officers getting out of the cars. The officers doing foot patrol. It's so that the community will know who the officers are, so that the community will feel comfortable and safe around the officers. So if there are some issues that's going on and you can't seem to find what's really going on, you can talk to the community, the public, because they will have become accustomed to you. They will know you and they'll trust you, and then you will be able to be a source of help for them. If you stay in the car and you don't get out, it makes it so much more difficult. When an incident happens and you're called to the scene, nobody knows you. Here you are trying to ask for help. Who saw it? Does anybody know what happened? And people don't want to talk to you. Police, community policing will help resolve that. I think that's one of the most important things. But community policing cannot be in one area. The Oakland County Sheriff's Department represents all of Oakland County. You have to have community policing throughout the county, and it has to be set up in a way that the different communities within the county, they know the deputies that are in that area. And I think that it can be a wonderful tool for the Sheriff's Department, a wonderful opportunity for the public to become much more aware of the Oakland County Sheriff's Department and the things that they offer and the things that they can do to make the community safer for them, for the public.
All right. Thank you, Senator. Chief Jones, again, same question. Community policing, what does that mean to you? What does that mean in action?
Vaughn, that is an excellent question. For me, as a sheriff, I believe that community policing is not a one-size-fits-all. Oakland County is spread out across the county. You've got two major cities, Pontiac and Rochester Hills. So you have to have empowerment of the station commanders at each of those locations and each of the other substations. You sit down with the elected officials and you design a program based upon what their wants and their desires are for their community. First of all, you get that kind of input, so you have an open door. You're going to empower your leaders in your organization to sit down with them and give them the ability to say, let's custom design what each community wants. And what has been said is correct. You get the officers out the car, you get the officers involved, you get them playing basketball with the kids, you get them walking the beats. I remember in Rochester Hills, we had bikes and we had horses. All of that was toward community policing. You work the community policing aspect that way by getting the community leaders to sit down with you so you can design a program that they have input in, not one size fits all. Another thing you could do in the community policing program is you can reach out to the older person's commission in each community and have contacts with the older person so you can get and design programs to stop elder abuse, stop scamming the elders. You can also work in programs to stop the violence with our youth. So all of this you can roll up under a program of community policing, not one size fits all. It also ties into an idea that I've had about bringing in the faith-based community, sitting down with them overall for countywide and for these other areas, and you have them sit at the table with you because most of your faith-based community leaders are very much aware of the citizens in your community. So you can tie into some of the programs that they already have in existence and help you empower your officers to get involved more so in the community. In Oakland County, most of the officers live in the communities where they work. As it was, it makes it easier for them to take a part in those type of programs, especially being assigned there. So you empower the officers to spend a little bit more time doing things that besides zipping along in the car with the windows rolled up and the air conditioning on, and you have them get out of the car and partake in meeting the members of the community that will have input into the program that they're going to help you design for their community. Community policing works. It has worked in the past. It's been around a long time under different variations. But as sheriff, I would design a community policing program that is not one size fits all. Get all the faith-based leaders and community leaders to sit at the table and help design a community policing program for their community that will work in their community because they have input. That is what I have as an idea for community policing, Vaughn.
All right.
Vaughn?
Yes.
Can I offer a rebuttal to that?
Yes, absolutely.
You know what, in the very beginning, and I agree with most of what was said, but in the very beginning, talked about Pontiac and Waterford as being two major cities. That is exactly what I'm talking about when I say that the Sheriff's Department is not spread out throughout the county and they don't really even think about the rest of the county. There's certain areas that they're in, but that's just what I'm talking about. You know what, the major cities in Oakland County are not Pontiac and Waterford. The major cities are, for instance, the largest city is what, Troy? The next one is Farmington Hills. The next one is the city of Southfield. They don't even think about it. I'm not saying that the local police there don't do their jobs, because they do. They do an excellent job there. But the residents deserve to know who the Sheriff's Department is, and if the philosophy is in all those areas, Pontiac, Waterford, in those areas, then we pay taxes for the Oakland County Sheriff's Department and we don't receive the services. So that's the issue that I have when you talk about spreading out, and I've talked about it, spreading it out throughout the county and not in particular areas.
I agree with you. However, I was speaking to Pontiac and Rochester Hills because we contract with Pontiac and Rochester Hills. So that is where the community-based program would be in Pontiac and Rochester Hills. And for Troy and Southfield and those other communities in Farmington Hills, we have, in my office, I would have that opportunity to reach out to all of those police chiefs and the fire chiefs, because I'm also a certified firefighter, and develop programs and relationships with them. That is on a basis where we have to go in and help them and assist them, because those communities have fire and police departments we would go and help them on secondary roads, but those communities are primary and we're secondary in those communities. If they want us to assist them on a community policing problem, we would be more than happy to do that, because you open up the sheriff's department to all of the communities by doing it. I work secondary roads. I work traffic enforcement. I work alcohol enforcement. I worked in every community in the past doing just that. It's there. It has always been there, and it will always be there under my leadership. The problem is secondary roads grant, the 416 grant, if you take a look, it has been cut. Therefore, I'm quite sure there's a problem with the secondary roads. But you still find a way to get those officers out there and let them back up those communities. It is how we've done the business. It is how we would do business under my leadership. Yes, Vaughn, there are other communities. We back them, but they're primary. Rochester Hills and Pontiac have contracts. That is why I said we'd sit down with their community and develop a program for them, because we are their primary law enforcement.
Thank you both for for expounding on your comments earlier. I do appreciate the discussion. I appreciate the detailed answers. I had another question, but I'm going to skip that, and I want to go to something that was brought up in the Facebook chat, and I'm going to have to read this here. But it's for you guys to comment. The ACLU Advancement Project and Michigan Liberation brought a lawsuit against the Oakland County Sheriff and the Oakland County Jail in the Michigan Eastern District Court on April 17th. And the judge issued a restraining order against the county jail the day the lawsuit was filed because of the conditions people were being held in. And this relates to kind of the conditions around the coronavirus and COVID-19, that the inmates were not being held with proper social distancing guidelines. Medically fragile individuals were not being released. This is something that we're going to have to be dealing with for a very long period of time. We're not anywhere clear of the complications of the coronavirus. So can you guys speak a little bit on that lawsuit and talk about how you as sheriff would try and solve some of these problems and address these conditions? And I think this is to Senator Gregory first.
Of course it would be. Let me just say that this is, without being in the Sheriff's Department, it's really difficult to speak to that. And I know that I followed it in the paper. I saw where they talked about the case was going to court, and then ultimately the court ruled in the for the ACLU and said that the county needed to make some changes. And the one thing I can speak to, and I would say, is that what I would try to do is those inmates that are eligible to go on some tether and as many as you can to get out of the jail, out of that, that's would be the first thing. And in some cases, some of the inmates in there that may have mental health issues, and if you try to get them out, there's no place for them to go. They go back on the street. I think as a sheriff, as an elected official, as somebody that's involved in the community, you would try to go to some nonprofits and ask them, can you help us out? We may want to put this person, we may want to get them out of the jail, out of this situation, and maybe put a tether on them. Do you have a facility where we can take them outside of the jail so they'll have 3 meals a day and they will be able to be fed and taken care of? I think that's one of the things that you can do. But with regards to the lawsuit, anytime the court rules and they say that the sheriff must do something, then clearly the sheriff did not present his case that he wasn't able to do it. Evidently, when he said he couldn't do it, the judge felt that he could do it, and that's a problem. I think that in this day and age, you can die from this pandemic, from this coronavirus. So I think that you have to take that in consideration. Is a crime that significant that you want to punish somebody by killing them? So I think that you have to look at all the options and alternatives. And I'm not saying that you can only do so much in a jail. I mean, it is a jail, and you do have inmates in there that some have to be locked down. If you're in there for a violent crime, then you can't just release everybody in the jail and say, well, because of corona, you can get out. Well, that's not going to happen. But those that are older, those that are maybe more susceptible, you would try to do what you can, and obviously the nonviolent ones. But I I think that maybe you may even want to call the state and ask them, do they even have some facilities that maybe you could spread this out? But without knowing more, it's difficult to say a whole lot about it, because it would, for me, it would just be guessing what was going on, because I'm not in the jail, so I really don't know all this that's going on inside of it.
Thank you, Senator. Next up, same question, Chief Jones.
I am not going to guess. I don't have to speculate, because deputies were stopping by my house and calling me before this took place. And what they told me was they were fearing for their safety, because the virus was already in the jail. And for them, they were looking for the equipment. Where's the equipment? Where's the equipment for us, for our safety, for our family safety? And what are we going to do about inmates? Which inmates are positive? This coronavirus, that's why I led off with, that would be the #1 thing that I would assess and figure out where we are upon my election to sheriff. Where are we at with this coronavirus, especially in the jail, and then across the rest of the organization? But specifically, outside of the lawsuit, all I did was read it in the paper, and the deputy stopped by the house and told me this stuff. The reality is leadership failed, because you have to be able to sit down. Those attorneys representing those inmates probably contacted someone and said, let's have a sit down and see if we can solve this before we get into the courts. So before we got into the courts would have been an opportunity for the sheriff, current sheriff, and his staff to mitigate the problem. Mitigating the problem would have indicated that you had the vision to see that this virus was spreading. You've got people captive in there. What do you need to do to protect them? Because once we house you, we're responsible for your safety. That was not taking place according to what we read in the paper, and also from the deputies that were concerned about their safety. So that's a failure of leadership at the time. Under my leadership, we'd be looking down the road like I was looking down the road when it first took place in Wuhan. You get in front of things like that, you make sure you got equipment. Oakland County has one of the best homeland security operations in this state. I'm quite sure they trained for a pandemic. So when the pandemic started, when it left Wuhan and went to Italy, someone should have been from the Sheriff's Department staff, should have been contacting Homeland Security saying, we have a problem. What can we do to mitigate this? I don't believe that is what took place, because the deputies were telling me that was what didn't take place. I believe under my leadership, we'd be in front of this and we would handle it. Also, under my social justice reform is the cash bail reform. I support that initiative. It is time to stop locking up misdemeanor traffic arrests, OUIL, marijuana possession. Those type of arrests no longer need to be in the jail. They're only in jail because they can't pay their cash bail. So that's a penalty, because a telephone call in there is probably about $10 a minute. So now they're really stuck. Let's find a way to get them out. There are tons of ways of getting them out of jail so they don't lose their jobs, they don't lose their family, they don't lose their home. Those are the type of people that you need not to be holding in the jail. That gives the taxpayer some relief, and it also leaves room for the real violent offenders, because we are still tough on crime. Getting them off the street, that solved that problem. But someone was not watching, didn't have the vision, poor leadership, allowed this to manifest itself without getting in front of it, and then didn't sit down with the attorneys when they came and said, let's have a conversation about this. Just judging from the newspaper, just judging from information, not based on fact, but something was a failure there. And that is why the deputies were afraid, and that's why they were reaching out to us. They probably reached out to Randy also. Thanks, Ron.
Thank you. And now we're going to go to Randy. Same question. Comment on the lawsuit about the from the ACLU and Michigan Liberation about the safety of inmates in the Oakland County Jail.
Yeah, the safety of the inmates, the inmate population is almost half now. They've let out on early releases quite a bit. The cleaning facility, I used to work the trustee dorm. I was in charge of cleaning on midnights. It's a very, very clean jail. One of the cleanest jails, I will admit. One of the cleanest jails I've ever been to. And when I was on transport, I went all over the state and the UP, dropping and picking up from all different jails, all over Michigan, all different prisons. So I know our jail is one of the cleanest ones. The deputies, they all call me, they all contact me when this started going around. I started calling my friends in the jail. I don't have road patrol guys stopping by because they got a job to do. But the guys in the jail, they call me a lot, and after work, they text me a lot and tell me what's going on because I want to be kept up on what's they're cleaning, constantly mopping, cleaning, everything. That lawsuit is probably a couple of guys that are looking for an early release. There was millions of lawsuits over the last 25 years when I was there over, didn't get a pencil. I didn't get to watch my TV program. That is probably a lawsuit from somebody wants an early release that just got in jail for doing a year. The problem is like Chief Jones said, the punishments have to meet the crime. We have to I've worked for 42 different judges, 8 different courthouses. As sheriff, I'm going to go and have a one-on-one meeting with all the judges that deal with the jail. Some of these judges are fantastic judges on the bench. Fantastic. I know quite a few that they're way too gung-ho throwing people in jail for misdemeanors, little tiny offenses, which they shouldn't be wasting the taxpayers' time. But back to the lawsuit, if they think they have a legit lawsuit, then I'm all for it. Let the courts hear your lawsuit, have your lawyer file it, and let the judge figure it out. But as far as inhumane, I do not believe that. Separation, we do have separated dorms, separated pods, separated blocks for the infected ones. Yes, that is going on. I will give kudos to the jail.
All right. Thank you, Deputy Maloney. So I'm going to ask, this is kind of a little bit of a, I always like to call this a little bit of a point of privilege, but because I'm, the chair of the Oakland County Democratic Party, I do have the ability to get a little bit political. So can I ask all of you to describe a little bit your relationship with the Democratic Party, your relationship as a person or as a professional law enforcement agent, however you want to frame it. What's your history? How have you been involved with the Democratic Party over your lifetime? This is going to go to Chief Jones first.
Thanks, Vaughn. I started out as a Democrat. I became a Republican, and I came back to being a Democrat. I never joined any party other than the Democratic Party. My experience is that I believe that in the principles of inclusion and tolerance, and I believe that women have a right for to claim what goes on with their own bodies, and all the tenets that seem to fit within the Democratic Party, and that's my party of choice. And I've never been elected to office as a Democrat. This is my first opportunity to do that. And I'm wholeheartedly a Democrat leaning forward into what we stand for.
All right. Then we need to go to Senator Gregory.
Okay. My involvement in the Democratic Party has been my whole life. I've been a Democrat my entire life. All my years here in Oakland County. And in Oakland County, I was the former chair of the Southfield Dem Club. Twice. I was the vice chair. I was the recording secretary. I was the treasurer. I was on the Oakland County Dems executive board at one time. Been involved in many Democratic campaigns. I've spoke on behalf of Governor Blanchard when he was running for governor. I've spoke on behalf of Governor Granholm. And just recently, Governor Whitmer. I served with her in the Senate, so we knew each other. And she asked me early on about supporting her and helping her. So I told her I would, and I ended up being a surrogate for her and speaking on her behalf at a lot of events. I've been a Democrat, and let me just say this, and I talked about my numbers and the ability to be able to be a top vote getter. Part of that is due to my involvement with the Democratic Party and being able to get the Democratic vote out. I think that's one of the reasons that I've been the vote getter. When I was a club chair in Southfield, we started with like 10 members, and we ultimately, when I was left out, it was like 100 members. And we got to the point where we were having holiday parties at my house. My wife would, she wasn't the happiest, but we ended up having parties there at the house, and that's how we got close with the Democrats in the area, not just in Southfield, but in the area. And I think that is what spoke to how I ended up getting the number of votes that I did within for the elections.
All right. And Deputy Maloney, same question to you.
Well, raised up, never really was into politics until I got to be an adult. And watching how the sheriff's, I will keep this short and simple, watching how the sheriff's department is going as a political sheriff took the reins, just absolute ridiculous over the last 19 years as watching a political sheriff try to run a sheriff's office. Over the last 3 years, I've been paying more and more attention to our political around the country, the politics around the country. And I got to thinking that the Democratic Party is going in the right direction these days. And I was never affiliated with one or the other. I played down the middle. But I'm glad that I chose this side because I think they have the right idea on which way the country should be going. And I'm really proud and happy to be part of the Democratic Party.
Thank you. We're glad to have you. So this is going to be my last question, and I'm going to give some time for all of you to do a closing statement, and then we'll kind of wind things down. To answer one question from the chat, yes, I have a little bit of sunburn. I've been working in my yard lately, so ta-da. This is going to be a question, another question from the chat. Over the past, at least the last decade or two, it seems like police departments across the country have shifted more towards almost a paramilitary or military kind of footing. We talked tonight about the importance of community policing, and all of you talked about how important it is to get officers, you know, out of their cars and on their feet walking around in neighborhoods. But again, as we've seen, the culture over the past decade or two has sort of been shifting the other way towards, you know, more militarized interactions, more, you know, SUVs that are coming around, and more SWAT raids, more no-knock raids. So how do we strike a balance between those two poles? That it seems like there is always a very, you know, strong need to make sure that all of our officers stay safe as they're doing their jobs. But how do we balance the need for them, for their safety, versus the need for them to interact in a very vulnerable position sometimes with the community? And this is going to go to Deputy Maloney first.
Well, the military part of that is a chain of command, which was brought down years and years and years ago, which is a good thing if you're working for a sheriff's office. But all the paramilitary vehicles and run around and stuff like that, the Oakland County Sheriff's Office, back to the budget, has a overabundance of toys that there's no reason to have them. It's all about community policing. Get out, meet the community. The raids are if the prosecutor seems fit to write them, then the raids have to go on. But all the paramilitary running around, that needs to stop. All the armored vehicles running around trying to scare people, that does not work. I've noticed over the years watching that has just a total non-effect. It just makes matters worse when you have all these vehicles and people running around. So I would take a really good look at that, and it has a reverse effect. Instead of just community policing is part of I mean, it's a huge deal. Community policing is a huge deal, and thank God the Sheriff's Office hasn't really had too many problems in that paramilitary area, but they have stumbled a couple times in my 25 years, but it's always been fixed, trained on, and try to turn around. So the paramilitary is going to be there when you need captains so far down the chain of command. You need that, but on the outside, running around with military vehicles, I don't think that this is the time or place anymore these days to have that.
All right. Thank you, Deputy. Next, Senator Gregory, same question. How do we manage the balance between community policing and the increasing sort of paramilitary trappings that a lot of police departments have used?
I agree with Deputy Maloney. I think that this paramilitary, and you know, that's almost like you don't have any community policing, and it's almost like people are strangers to you. You're using these vehicles, these paramilitary vehicles to come down a neighborhood block for what? I think that community policing will help resolve a lot of the issues. Yeah, there will be those times when the police will have to take the hard line and bring in the forces, but I think most police departments, including the Oakland County Sheriff's Department, are equipped for that. They're equipped to be able to handle if there's hostages in a home, or there's a shooter in a home, there's somebody that they need to get out. They can do that. You know, these tanks and these kind of things. Who are you really going after? Is this your everyday Joe? You know, I suppose if you felt that the county was under siege in that way, you would probably want more than just the Oakland County Sheriffs to be a part of that. I think you would call in other agencies to help you out. I think that community policing has to be the way to go. I don't think we can get sidetracked. I don't think we can get pulled in another direction. And that's what I think that through the years I've shown that I've been able to do is stay the course, you know, figure out a direction to go in and stay that direction. And by doing that, you can get things accomplished. I think that community policing is essential to move departments forward, all departments forward in this day and age. I think that this paramilitary, I think that that's something that's more of a show. You know, you have them sitting in your I guess wherever, just sitting, waiting for that opportunity to be able to use them. And then at what risk do you bring them in? So I agree. I think that community policing should tip the scales, and you really should involve yourself, all the departments, with community policing more. And then when incidents arise that you need force, you call on your other departments to help you out, to be able to help you out of those situations.
All right, thank you, Senator. Chief Jones?
I believe since September 11th, we've seen the military, paramilitary really start to spread across major law enforcement agencies. And I believe in Oakland County, it did that way also. I believe it has a place, but it shouldn't be the #1 way you patrol. I just recently had one of my officers ask me to get the new vest that you can put your gun and your taser and all that stuff on the front. And I told him, no, we don't need to look like we're in the military. And there's a reason for not looking like you're in the military, because you make yourself unapproachable to people. I believe with the diversification of Oakland County, we now have different people in our community and different cultures in our community that look would not allow them to communicate with you. So I believe that there is a need for it, but we don't need to have every car and every officer looking like they're ready to go to war, because that is not going to work in a community policing environment. We need to be able to have those type of officers and that type of equipment, but you don't need all your officers looking like that, because you won't be able to broach some of the cultures that are in our community. Another thing is the raids, the no-knock raids that you talked about, those require a judge's signature. So that system where they have raids and they show up with all the equipment, there's a reason for that, because a judge has authorized that. You can't raid without a judge's signature. So that would take that off the table. But softening the approach of your officers goes a long way. When you sit down with them, you listen to them and you learn and you put in the leadership piece, you back them away from all of that militaristic look. I know officers that can grow a full head of hair, but today that skinhead look is what is pervasive throughout law enforcement. When I started, it was mirror sunglasses, and I learned earlier then from my training officer that citizens want to see your eyes. The skinhead look is another thing that has taken over, which pushes people away from you. So there's a way that you can sit down with your officers, communicate with them about how we look. Oakland County sheriffs used to look fantastic. Our Class A uniforms were the best. Somewhere along the line, we've gone to Class B uniforms with patch pockets and 19,000 things in them and no-shine boots and all of that type of equipment. Rules and regulations and policies and procedures can be put in place to get away from that militaristic look, and you can use your militaristic stuff when necessary. We don't need all of our officers looking like they're ready to go to war. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chief. So now I'm going to ask each of you to give me a closing statement. Try and stick to a couple minutes. We're going to start with Senator Gregory. Your closing statement, sir.
Okay, I want to again thank the Oakland County Dems for this opportunity for me to be able to get my message out. I do want to say that for everybody to know that I have a proven history of creating positive changes. Every place that I've been within the Sheriff's Department, when I was with the Wayne County Sheriff's Department, one of the things that we did was we fought hard to get the secondary road bill. You heard it earlier talking about secondary roads. I was a part of that. Went to Lansing. We got all the deputies, most of the deputies from around the state to at least send 1 or 2 cars. We had a ring around the Capitol in order to be able to get the secondary road funding, get the secondary road bills done. That's what I've done with the Sheriff's Department. When I became a county commissioner, for those people that live in the South End, Catalpa Oaks was, they were looking to turn that into, to sell it to business owners to be able to turn it into properties. We, you know, it was in the area that I represented. We kept it a green space. Got the Oakland County Parks to pay $750,000 to keep that as a green space. The county maintains it, and it is now a county park. As a state representative, I was able to get a bill done that kept helped to maneuver those overseas the service personnel, give them an opportunity to get their ballots in quicker. And as a state senator, as I indicated earlier, it was the Medicaid expansion bill. So everywhere that I've been, I have made positive changes. I would expect no less than with the Oakland County Sheriff's Department that you will see some significant changes. And yes, today I can tell you some of the things that I want to do, but once I get in the department, you will be able to see some of the changes that I've made. And I'm sure, and I assure you will like those changes. And I will tell you also, with this election, again, I will bring out all Democrats that I possibly can in this to help Democrats get elected in the general election. Once we are through this primary and now we're in the general, I will marshal the forces and get all the votes and get all the people we can. And we have an opportunity, I think, this year to get some state representatives elected, to get some, a lot of Democrats up and down the ticket elected, from the president, from the Democratic nominee for president, all the way through the smallest races that are Democratic. I think we have that opportunity. But in order to do that, we need to get the votes out. And I'm telling you, as somebody who was a top vote getter, that will be my priority as your nominee for Oakland County Sheriff. I would ask for your support, and you can find out more about me on www.vincentgregoryforsheriff.com. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Senator Gregory. Chief Jones, your closing statement.
Vaughn, thank you for this opportunity, and thank the Oakland County Democratic Party for providing this time for us to present ourselves to the voters. I'm your candidate. I have worked at the Sheriff's Department before I retired. I worked in every division as a captain. I led those divisions. I have been trained and prepared to do this job all of my life. I went to school. I've got an associate's, a bachelor's, 2 master's degrees, 1 in technology and 1 in education. I've gone to all of the law enforcement training schools, from the FBI to the United States Secret Service. I have certifications from all of those schools. I am a certified police officer. I am a certified firefighter. I am a certified school administrator, because I love talking to students, and I've used that as a way to broach the community policing and getting in there, talking to the young adults. What we have is an opportunity to elect a Democrat as sheriff, and not only just as sheriff, all the way across the ticket. It is not time for a politician. It is time for a law enforcement officer, someone that is steeped in how we do the job today, not 15 years ago, not 20 years ago, someone that has done the job. Recently, I was patrolling in the village of Lake Orion as a patrol officer to keep my skill set up. I love law enforcement enough that as a chief, I was working as an officer because I wanted to still keep my skill set up and provide to my community a sense of policing, because I have a wealth of knowledge and training. It is time for Oakland County to look at putting a law enforcement officer in the office of the sheriff. The department has been politicized because we put a politician there. It is time to get politics out of the sheriff's department. And if you put a lawman in there, a person like myself that is steeped in rules, regulations, and knowing how to do the job, managing by walking around, managing by making sure your people have the right equipment, managing by knowing your people, managing and putting your people, empowering your people so that they can do the job, we will have a great Oakland County Sheriff's Department. It was a great place to work. It has become not that. It is time for us to bring in real leadership and real police officers to let them do the job that they can do. There are great people there. They're just looking for a leader. I'm that leader. Get behind me and support me. My name is Barnett Jones. My website is barnettjonesforsheriff.org. And I am the best candidate for us to take the sheriff's office and do great work in the sheriff's office throughout the community. Thank you for this time.
I muted myself. Whoops. Yeah, life in the 21st century. Deputy Maloney, you're going to have the last word here.
Well, growing up, my parents worked in the shop at Plant 6. And when I told them I wanted to be a police officer, I grew up in the plant as a child, had many friends growing up at Plant 6 as a child. And everybody thought I would follow my parents through Plant 6, UAW. Well, I decided to go the other way. And when they found out I wanted to be a police officer, they weren't too happy, but they were okay with it. And my mom just wanted me to be the best officer that I could possibly be. And yes, the sheriff's office has taken a detour with a political sheriff. I just retired. I had 19 years with the sheriff. I've seen the devastation. I've seen the chaos that resulted from it. I did have the pleasure of working for a sheriff that was a sheriff for 6 years. And so I learned how to be a good sheriff, the right sheriff. Then I learned how not to be a sheriff from the sheriff that's there now, because he's a politician. And all my friends that are working there, they are miserable. Everybody's miserable from the top down. But you have to start at the top and go down. When I get in there as sheriff, there's going to be a house cleaning, and probably some of Mr. Jones's friends will be running out the back door. Mr. Jones was there as a captain. And like I stated before at one of the meetings, he had his turn, he had his time to help clean up the sheriff's office, and he refused. He refused. That didn't happen. He's been gone a long time. And that's great. He's keeping up his law enforcement skills. That's great. But I just left there. My whole life was there. I didn't go off playing politics. I didn't go off to other training facilities. I stayed there for 25 years, working every position. I know what it's going to take to be sheriff. I know what it's going to take to turn that boat around. I know what it's going to take a lot of work. So thank you very much. Thank you, the Democratic Party. I appreciate your time in this matter. Vote Rainey Maloney for sheriff if you want a change.
All right. Thank you very much, Deputy Maloney. So I want to, as we wind down, I want to thank all of you and commend all of you for choosing to run for office. I know it's a difficult and challenging proposition in the best of times. And right now, where we're all working and connecting with each other remotely, it's even more difficult. But I thank you for your time tonight. Thank you to all the people who are watching this on Facebook. This has been kind of an exciting new experiment for us, something we were hoping to do in person, but I think we're adapting. We're working as best we can. For any of you who are watching, we're going to put this up on our YouTube channel, so it will be available for people to watch. You can share it with your friends, save it in perpetuity, I don't know, watch it late at night when you're trying to go to sleep or stay awake, whichever. But we're trying to do a lot more of this sort of digital work at the Oakland County Democratic Party, and we're hopeful that you enjoyed this and you'll help us keep providing more content like this. Please make sure that you sign up for our email list at ocdp.org. Make sure that you, if you've watched this, make sure that you like our Facebook page. We have more of these forums coming up very soon. And we're going to be hopefully doing more of this as we are moving into the digital campaigning season of 2020. If you're able to, please try and chip in and give us a little bit of money. We have a donate button on our homepage at OCDP.org. We're hopeful that we can get some more recurring contributions this month. Just a little bit of people, a couple people chipping in $5 a month makes a huge difference and will help us get more content like this out to you. I want to thank Chief Jones, Senator Gregory, and Deputy Maloney for their time again tonight. This was, I think, a fantastic event, and I think all of you have different strengths that you bring to the Democratic Party, and I hope that you'll all stay involved long past this cycle. So again, thanks to all of you for watching. Thanks to all of our candidates for being here. And please stay home, stay safe, and we'll see you again as soon as we can in person. Thank you very much and have a great night.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
the
very much.
opportunity.
Thank you.